So I want you to imagine like stepping into this massive, just completely uncontrolled sociological experiment.
Right.
Millions of people, absolutely no filter, and they're just dumping their deepest anxieties, their wildest conspiracy theories, and just their rawest curiosities into this one giant chaotic conversation.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's super loud, and yeah, a lot of it is just noise, but if you actually roll up your sleeves and sift through that cultural id, you start finding these brilliant, terrifying nuggets that explain exactly what it means to be alive right now.
It's basically modern archaeology, if you think about it.
Oh, totally.
Because you aren't looking at polished press releases or, sanitized news. You're looking at the raw data of the human psyche.
Yeah.
Like, what are people actually terrified of? What are they desperately trying to fix?
Right.
And unstructured conversations, especially when the guardrails are just completely removed, they act as this sort of cultural seismograph. They pick up the tremors long before the actual earthquake hits.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for you listening today, our mission is to act as your guides through exactly that kind of cultural seismograph. We are doing a deep dive into the weeds of a massive, sprawling, entirely unfiltered, long-form comedy conversation, specifically the Joe Rogan Experience.
The sheer volume of what gets covered in those marathon sessions is just mind-blowing.
It really is. And we're going to pull out the most fascinating threads about modern paranoia, hidden history, and the extreme lengths people go to just to feel something.
And the absolute bedrock of all these anxieties right now is like the fault line everything else rests on is the distortion of truth. I mean, we live in an environment where information is weaponized so quickly that human reality just hasn't figured out how to cope with it yet.
Which brings us to this incredibly sharp juxtaposition that came up in the discussion. We're living in an era where false narratives can instantly execute your reputation, but simultaneously, the truth is entirely accessible to these massive institutions.
Yeah, the contrast is wild.
Let's start with the personal side first. They brought up the tragic case of former Major League Baseball pitcher Trevor Bauer.
Right, the allegations.
Yeah, this is a guy who was hit with false sexual assault allegations right at the absolute peak of his athletic prime. The financial toll alone was staggering. I mean, he lost out on a potential
$300 million contract.
Exactly, $300 million. Plus, he lost years of his MLB career, had to go play in Japan. And when the dust finally settles and the truth actually comes out, what happens to the accuser?
Well, she was fined roughly $300,000 for violating a settlement. So she allegedly cost him $300 million in years of his legacy, and she pays $300,000.
Which is a rounding error compared to the damage.
No, completely.
But then, to show how truly bizarre the landscape of truth is, they contrasted that life-ruining scenario with this almost surreal corporate hoax. A male employee at JP Morgan claimed his female boss forced herself on him.
And the details were just
comically bad. He claimed she referred to her own chest as cannons, which, as anyone who has ever met a human woman knows, is not exactly typical female vocabulary.
Not at all. And JP Morgan actually investigated it and found it to be a completely fabricated retaliatory lawsuit.
Yeah.
But the broader point is the weaponization of the lie is instantaneous.
Yeah, the barrier to entry for destroying a life is literally zero. You just hit send.
But here is where the paranoia really sets in. Because while private citizens can be ruined by a fake tweet, the government possesses the technological capability to just rip open your most guarded digital vaults. The conversation dug deep into the realities of modern surveillance, heavily spotlighting the FISA bill.
Let's actually define that for a second, because people throw FISA around a lot online. That's the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It's the legal framework that dictates how the U.S. government can monitor foreign targets.
Right.
But the massive anxiety surrounding it is that in the process of sweeping up foreign communications, millions of private conversations from American citizens get caught in the net.
Yeah.
And just a quick disclaimer here for you listening, regardless of where you or I or anyone sits politically on border security or FISA or any of the political figures mentioned, and we are looking at this strictly as an impartial measure of cultural anxiety. We're not taking any sides here, but the capabilities being discussed are just terrifying.
Precisely. We aren't endorsing any politics here. We're just looking at the technological reality they unpacked. For example, they discussed how the government deals with supposedly impenetrable encrypted apps like Signal.
Which everyone thinks is totally safe.
Right. The claim was made that it costs intelligence agencies roughly $600,000 to decrypt a target's private Signal messages.
But wait, how does that actually work mechanically? I mean, Signal uses end-to-end encryption. Even the people who built Signal don't have the keys to read the messages in transit. The math is theoretically unbreakable. Are they saying the government actually broke the AES encryption protocol?
No, no, they aren't breaking the math. That would take a supercomputer millions of years.
Right.
The $600,000 price tag is to bypass the encryption entirely by breaking the physical device. They purchase what are known as zero-day or zero-click exploits.
Like the Pegasus spyware stuff.
Exactly like the infamous Pegasus spyware. It silently infects your phone without you even needing to click a link. It takes over your operating system and essentially just reads the messages right off your screen before they are ever encrypted or, after they are decrypted on your end.
Oh, wow. So the lock on the front door is indestructible, but they just paid $500,000 to slip through the drywall.
That's a perfect way to put it.
They brought up this anecdote about Tucker Carlson trying to set up an interview with Russian contacts via Signal, believing it was totally secure, only to have those communications intercepted by U.S. intelligence. It paints a picture of this digital panopticon. It's like this digital Wild West. We're terrified of the town gossip hanging us with a lie, but the sheriff is secretly sitting in a dark room reading everyone's locked diaries.
And when you realize the sheriff is reading the diaries, human psychology kicks in. Our brains are hardwired to look for patterns to protect ourselves. When institutions become opaque and all-powerful, paranoia isn't just a fringe hobby anymore. It becomes a baseline survival mechanism.
Which explains so much.
It really does. It explains the bizarre internet conspiracies that gain serious traction, like the 2023 time machine tweet they analyzed.
Okay, this was wild. So there's a tweet from 2023 that eerily predicted the exact nature of the 2024 assassination attempt on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The account was named Cole Allen, supposedly linked to a missing NASA scientist named Henry Martinez. And the profile picture: a green toad in a tuxedo holding a glass, which bizarrely mirrored the visual aesthetic of a photo taken during the actual 2024 incident.
The visual similarity was weird.
Very weird. And they were seriously debating if this was the most elaborate psychological operation ever conceived, or literally a time traveler.
I mean, it sounds completely absurd. A NASA scientist? A green toad? Time travel? But you have to look at the psychological mechanism at play here. When the public learns that their impenetrable encrypted messages can be bought and read for 600 grand, the boundaries of what is possible just get blown wide open.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Suddenly, an orchestrated time machine psyop doesn't feel that much crazier than the verified reality of digital surveillance.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because that paranoia isn't just born from the digital age. It's inherited. If you want to know why we don't trust the government with our data, look at what they've done with our bodies in the past. The conversation moved into the declassification of the M-Culture files, specifically Operation Midnight Climax.
What's fascinating here is that it sounds like a B-movie script, but it's deeply documented, verified historical fact. In the 1950s and 60s, the CIA set up covert brothels in San Francisco and New York.
Just insane.
They hired sex workers to lure in unsuspecting men. Once inside, these men were secretly dosed with massive amounts of LSD, without their consent or knowledge whatsoever. And then, CIA operatives would sit behind two-way mirrors, literally drinking martinis, observing, and filming the interactions to study how to blackmail foreign officials and manipulate human behavior.
Just really sit with that for a second. Imagine you're a guy in the 1960s. You go to a bar, you meet a woman, and the next thing you know, the walls are melting because the Central Intelligence Agency just slipped acid into your drink.
You'd never believe it.
If you tried to tell anyone that story, you would be thrown in an asylum. You'd be called a lunatic. But it was 100% real. So fast forward to today. When people look at a modern anomaly like the death of Jeffrey Epstein in federal custody and they refuse to believe the official story, it's not because they are crazy. It's because the precedent for institutional deception has already been set.
Exactly. The skepticism is a learned behavior, and the Epstein anomalies they discussed are glaring.
Oh, yeah.
You have the fact that his supposed suicide note was missing for weeks, only to be purportedly found later by his cellmate. And who was his cellmate? Nicholas Tartaglione.
Right, this guy.
A massive, heavily muscled former police officer who is sitting in federal holding, facing a quadruple murder charge.
Right. The guy facing the death penalty for burying 4 people on his property is the one who magically produces the missing suicide note. And then they got into the autopsy anomalies.
They noted extremely specific irregularities. like the claim that his prostate was missing during the autopsy.
Wait, I have to ask, why does a missing prostate matter in a hanging?
Well, from a forensic pathology standpoint, certain biological markers or fluid analyses can determine time of death, toxicology, or physical trauma prior to death. When organs just go missing in the most high-profile federal custody case of the century, it shatters the illusion of institutional competence.
Yeah, that's not a great look.
You stack a missing prostate and a quadruple murderer cellmate next to verified CIA acid brothels, and the official narrative just collapses.
And that erosion of trust is contagious.
Hmm.
It doesn't just stay quarantined in the intelligence or justice systems. It bleeds directly into how we view our own survival. Which leads us to what this deep dive highlighted as the ultimate broken institution, the U.S. healthcare system.
The numbers are just...
The scale of the numbers they were throwing around is hard to even comprehend.
The economics are absolutely staggering. The United States spends approximately $5.3 trillion annually on healthcare. To break that down, that is $15,474 per person every single year.
Wow.
It is by a massive margin the most expensive healthcare apparatus on the planet. Yet, despite that premium, the U.S. ranks 17th globally in actual coverage and health outcomes. We are paying the most to essentially be the sickest population among our peer nations.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Isn't that $5.3 trillion essentially funding the entire world's medical R&D? Like, we pay the premium so pharmaceutical companies have the capital to invent the MRI machines and the cancer drugs that the rest of the world then uses at a discount. Are we just subsidizing global medical innovation?
That's the common defense, sure, but the math doesn't actually support it. The vast majority of that $5.3 trillion isn't going into research labs. It's being swallowed by administrative bloat.
Ah, the paperwork.
Exactly. In a multi-payer system with thousands of different insurance plans, hospitals have to employ armies of medical coders and billing specialists just to argue with insurance companies over what gets covered. It's a massive parasitic layer of bureaucracy. They contrasted that current $5.3 trillion spend with estimates for transitioning to a streamlined universal system.
And what were the numbers on that?
The projections show a universal system would cost roughly $3.0 to $3.2 trillion annually.
Wait, really? That's over $2 trillion in savings. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like, we are legally mandated to pay for this luxury subscription box, but half the items are missing. We still feel terrible, and we know for a fact the basic box down the street is cheaper and actually works. I mean, does the sheer financial scale of the healthcare industry make it fundamentally immune to reform? The financial inertia of a $5 trillion industry feels like a black hole.
It is. It's too big to fail and too profitable to fix, which triggers a profound behavioral shift. If the macro institutions like the government, the justice system, the healthcare industry, if they cannot be trusted to protect or heal you, what do?
You figure it out yourself.
Exactly. You take it into your own hands. You hyper-focus on the micro level, your own biology. This is where the conversation may transition into how humans are pushing their physical bodies to the absolute limits of destruction and recovery.
Oh, the destruction is spectacular. We go from systemic failure to guys willingly getting launched out of cannons. They spent a huge amount of time unpacking the legacy of the Jackass crew.
It's the ultimate expression of biological autonomy in a weird way. They discuss Johnny Knoxville enduring a verified 16 concussions over the course of his career.
16.
The CTE implications alone are just horrifying.
And Danger Aaron, the stunts they detailed him doing, he literally stood behind a donkey with the explicit goal of taking a full-force kick directly to the groin, and he did.
Yeah.
And then they strapped him to a chair, covered him in honey and raw salmon, and let a live bear approach him. You could hear the visceral anxiety in the discussion just recounting it. But why? Why subject yourself to that?
Because in a world that feels increasingly sterile, bureaucratic, and numb, extreme physical pain is undeniably real. It's undeniable proof of life. But what's truly fascinating is the flip side of that coin. If we are willing to destroy our bodies for entertainment, the lengths we will go to repair them when the traditional healthcare system fails us are equally extreme. They discuss the rising use of stem cells for things like meniscus tears.
Right. Instead of traditional surgery, where a doctor just goes in and shaves away the damaged cartilage, people are flying to clinics to get stem cell injections. But how does that actually work better than surgery?
Think of your meniscus like a shock absorber in your knee. Traditional surgery often involves cutting out the torn piece. You're losing part of the shock absorber forever, which inevitably leads to arthritis.
That makes sense.
But stem cell therapy, mechanically speaking, injects undifferentiated cells into the tear. These cells respond to the inflammatory signals in your knee and theoretically differentiate into cartilage cells, attempting to actually regrow and heal the tissue rather than just amputating the frayed edges. It's regeneration versus subtraction.
That makes total sense. But the recovery talk didn't stop at physical joints. They went straight into the brain. They started talking about ibogaine.
Oh, this is one of the most compelling frontiers in alternative medicine right now. Ibogaine is a highly potent psychoactive alkaloid extracted from the root bark of an African shrub. Traditionally, it's known for inducing incredibly intense, often grueling, multi-day hallucinogenic trips.
Sounds rough.
It is, but the conversation focused on its chemical mechanics in the brain, specifically its alleged neuroregenerative properties.
And to highlight this, they brought up an incredibly bizarre anecdote about former Texas Governor Rick Perry. Now, Rick Perry has been a staunch, hardline conservative politician his entire life. The guy is not exactly the poster child for fringe psychedelic use.
Exactly. Yet the claim discussed was that Perry utilized ibogaine to treat natural brain atrophy, and the reported results were staggering.
Like what?
They claimed he recovered 25% of the atrophy within 6 weeks and completely reversed 100% of it within 6 months.
But how? How does a hallucinogen physically regrow brain tissue? Is it just making you feel better, or is it actually rebuilding the hardware?
It appears to be rebuilding the hardware. Mechanically, ibogaine and other psychedelics to varying degrees promotes neuroplasticity. It triggers a massive release of something called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Okay.
Think of BDNF as miracle grow for your neurons. It stimulates the growth of new dendritic spines and helps repair neural pathways that have degraded due to trauma, addiction, or just age. It essentially forces the brain into a state of hyper-repair.
So you have anti-drug politicians turning to African root bark to regrow their brains because the traditional medical system has nothing for them. It's wild. But it's not just trauma recovery. We are actively hacking our baseline biology for convenience, too. They spent a lot of time on the absolute cultural obsession with Ozempic and GLP-1 weight loss drugs. But the mechanics of how it works come with a massive existential toll.
This is where biological shortcuts intersect with psychology. GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic don't just magically burn fat. They mimic a hormone that targets the areas of the brain that regulate appetite and food intake.
Right, they make you feel full.
They delay gastric emptying so you feel full. But here is the critical mechanism. They also dampen the reward centers in the brain. The dopamine hit you get from eating a cheeseburger is significantly reduced.
But if it dampens the reward center for food, does it dampen it for everything else?
That is exactly what they discussed. Users are reporting a dampening of their entire baseline of desire. The speakers talked about people losing their general passion for life, experiencing a severely decreased sex drive. They even described a physical manifestation of this numbness, what they called lemur eyes.
Lemur eyes.
Yeah, a hollowed-out, flat, dead-behind-the-eyes look.
Are our modern chemical shortcuts, like taking a pill to lose weight at the cost of our biological passion, just another form of an extreme stunt? Like, are we trading our humanity for societal approval? So to fix the obesity epidemic, we are taking a pill that chemically turns down the volume on human desire.
It's a huge trade-off.
Which leads me to this thought. If we are voluntarily numbing our passions, our sex drives, our hunger, just to fit a societal aesthetic, what happens to the human need for thrill? If our baseline is medically numbed, don't we have to seek out increasingly extreme spikes just to feel alive?
You've hit the exact psychological mechanism driving the bizarre periphery of modern culture. If we connect this to the bigger picture, when the center becomes numb and hyper-regulated, the fringes become wild. The desire for attention and the need to feel a consequence drives people to treat reality like a digital playground.
The internet cloud economy.
Exactly.
They discussed this new trend that perfectly captures this: Scientology speedruns.
It's the ultimate collision of anti-institutional rebellion and algorithmic gamification. Groups of young people in Los Angeles are treating high-security Scientology buildings like levels in a video game.
It's crazy.
They break in, hit record on their phones, and literally sprint as deep into the facility as they can before security catches them. They are trying to speedrun a real-world, highly litigious cult for views.
They're trying to glitch reality. It's insane. And it bleeds over into this epidemic of streamer provocation. People walking around in public, live streaming, intentionally harassing strangers, trying to provoke a fight just to generate a viral clip. They think the camera protects them from physics.
Until physics reasserts itself. They highlighted a perfect example. A streamer was harassing people and made the fatal error of picking a fight with a man named Tiki, who happens to be a former top-level UFC fighter.
Oops.
Yeah. The streamer got in his face, threatened him, and Tiki instantaneously delivered a devastating strike to the jaw.
Down goes the streamer. It is the physical world violently popping the internet bubble. So what does this all mean? Are these speedruns and streamer fights just the modern, decentralized version of Jackass, only without the friendship and with much higher legal stakes?
Pretty much. But out of all the absurd fringe behaviors they covered, the story that broke my brain was the amputee cornhole champion.
Oh, man, yeah.
It sounds like dark fiction, but it encapsulates the absolute chaos of human capability. They discussed a professional cornhole player who has no arms and no legs. He uses a small nub on his shoulder to miraculously toss the bags with pinpoint accuracy. That alone is a testament to human resilience. But the story spirals.
Spirals is an understatement.
This same individual allegedly got into a heated argument while driving a car with 3 other men inside.
Wait, stop. A man with no arms and no legs was driving a car with 3 fully limbed passengers.
How? The mechanical logistics are completely baffling, but apparently he was operating the vehicle. During this argument, he somehow manages to produce a firearm, uses his nub to pull the trigger, and fatally shoots one of the men.
It's just
He
unbelievable.
then demands the other passengers help him dispose of the body. They panic and flee. So he drives off, eventually being tracked down by police at a hospital with the body still in the vehicle.
It's completely incomprehensible, but what does this entire spectrum mean? We have kids speedrunning cults, streamers getting knocked out for TikTok, and an amputee navigating a getaway car. The algorithmic demand for content has completely overridden the human instinct for self-preservation. It's like the entire world is doing a Jackass stunt, but there's no safety crew, there's no friendship, and the legal consequences are catastrophic.
Because the currency of the modern world isn't money anymore, it's attention.
Mhm.
And when the traditional paths to significance, trust in institutions, biological fulfillment, shared truth, when those are broken, people will manufacture significance through chaos.
Okay, let's take a breath and look back at this massive, messy warehouse we just walked through. We started with the terrifying reality of digital surveillance, where the government can bypass your encryption for $600,000 while private citizens destroy each other with hoaxes. We looked at how verified CIA operations like Midnight Climax laid the groundwork for why we don't trust the autopsy of Jeffrey Epstein, or the massive bureaucracy of a $5.3 trillion healthcare system. We saw people regrowing their brains with psychedelics while simultaneously chemically lobotomizing their passions with weight loss drugs. And we ended up in a hyper-gamified reality where internet clout crashes headfirst into the physical consequences of the real world.
It is a dizzying reflection of where we are.
It really is. And for you, listening to all of this, navigating this terrain requires a specific toolkit. In a world completely saturated with information overload, where truth and fiction are constantly wrestling in the mud, maintaining a deep sense of curiosity but anchoring it with relentless critical thinking is your absolute best defense. Don't just accept the headline, look for the mechanism behind it.
And as you navigate that mud, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. We discussed how Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA operating mind control brothels, was easily dismissed as paranoid tinfoil hat fiction right up until the exact moment the documents were declassified. Look around at the digital Wild West we are living in today. What widely dismissed, seemingly unhinged internet rumor floating around right now is going to be declassified as absolute, verified historical truth in 50 years.
Wow. It makes you want to look a little closer at the chaos, doesn't it? You never know what's actually gold. Keep digging.